I'm here with Elizabeth, the head of growth at Xverse, a Bitcoin wallet that is very easy to use. And today we're going to be diving into the Bitcoin world to see what's been going on because it's been a bit controversial and there's been some new developments for the first time in a while. So she'll be our guide to tell us what's been happening. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Louie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on. This will actually be the first episode where we're stepping outside of the Solana world. So lucky you to guide us there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so honored. And thanks to all the listeners, Solana listeners, for taking a chance on Bitcoin and just diving in. We're really, really excited to see a whole new wave of people getting interested in the ecosystem through ordinals.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, personally, I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter talking about ordinals, talking about BRC20s, some projects like minting new collections on Bitcoin. So, if you want to know what all the fuss is about, then this is the episode for you. But before we get into that fuss on Bitcoin, what's your background coming into crypto and um, maybe Bitcoin in particular as well?
Sure. Well, I have a bit of a unorthodox way of getting into crypto myself. I actually am coming from the luxury sector. So I was at Steinway and Sons for many years, and then Sotheby's auction house in New York. And I entered the crypto space about a year ago, and that was right at the tail end of the bull market. So the market cap was approaching $2 trillion. Sotheby's had just launched our Sotheby's metaverse, and there's the Constitution DAO. That was one of my auctions, and I just saw all of these exciting things happening in this space, and I just saw it was happening so fast, and I knew I wanted to. I was so curious. I wanted to get involved and see what I could do to have a direct impact on shaping this exciting future. So I started looking and was recruited eventually for a Bitcoin wallet for Xverse. And I thought Bitcoin is the perfect place to start. I really see Bitcoin as being, coming from the luxury sector. I see Bitcoin as the luxury chain and the chain that has the capability of supporting that space and humanity's most important artifacts. And of course, I think a wallet is always an exciting place to start because you really get a seat at the center of all the action happening, DeFi, payments, apps, and marketplaces and everything. So it's been an exciting place.
Interesting that you came from the luxury sector. Just briefly, like, what is the, I hate to say vibe, but like, what is the feeling about crypto, or was the feeling crypto back then? Because, as a, just as a regular viewer, you see some PR releases occasionally, but it's hard to actually gauge like how seriously they take crypto, or if it's more just like jumping on the hype train.
Right. I mean, I think it's definitely a mixture of both. At Sotheby's, it really was quite serious. They were building out that a department around supporting Web3 initiatives, and launching that platform was a really big step that they were applauded for, and in many different media outlets. So and a lot of the property that we were selling had digital NFTs attached. So I think it was, in regards to thinking about provenance, it was something that was really exciting for that space. I have yet to see so many full mass adoption in the luxury sector, but I mean already we're seeing brands like Louis Vuitton and Tiffany's and all these different brands start to dabble in it, and I think we're only going to see that more, especially with everything that's happening on Bitcoin these days.
Okay, then you're already hinting at it. Let's not bury the lead. Let's get straight into it. So, what has been going on in Bitcoin land over the last, I guess, year or so? And yeah, can you walk us through sort of the key new innovations?
Sure. Well, I think it's kind of exciting to, first of all, to give a little bit of context as to what's going on in Bitcoin right now as we're literally recording this. Uh, Bitcoin price action has been insane. We've just seen it uh, go up to 30K, just over 30K, which is the highest it's been in the last year. We're seeing firms like BlackRock apply for ETFs. Wisdom Tree and Invesco were shortly to follow. And I mean, this could be really huge. And not only that, but over the past 6 months, we've seen, for all of our Solana listeners out there, we've seen Bitcoin surpass Solana as the second most popular chain for NFTs, at least in regards to trading volume. So we're seeing an entirely new use case for Bitcoin beyond just money. Now it's a place where you can store data, and that's all thanks to ordinals. Uh,
Okay,
yeah,
Elizabeth, what are ordinals?
yeah, sure. We can dive right in. But I think maybe first, it's important to know. So ordinals are Bitcoin NFTs essentially, and a lot of people thought, oh wow, this is the first time we're seeing Bitcoin NFTs. But actually, Bitcoin NFTs have been around for a while. The first Bitcoin NFT to be minted was or mined was Rare Pepe, and that was back in 2016. But then a lot of the NFT activity took off on Ethereum because Bitcoin at the time really didn't have the smart contract capabilities necessary for NFTs. So that was a whole shift that happened, years ago. But at the same time, we did see some interesting developments. For example, on Bitcoin layers like stacks enable Bitcoin NFTs secured by the Bitcoin anchor block without making changes to Bitcoin itself. So there have been developments in Bitcoin NFTs. But with that said, there was never anything that was directly on chain and so accessible until ordinals came out. And ordinals are possible because, well, first of all, what are ordinals? Ordinals are basically we're uploading data to Bitcoin. And we do that by it's a process that updating is called it's a process called inscribing. So we're inscribing Satoshis, which is the smallest monetary unit of Bitcoin, so like a cent to a dollar, with unique data. So here we have a non-fungible, unique Satoshi, non-fungible token. And this is possible thanks to a few upgrades that happened in the past years on Bitcoin. The first was in 2017. This is for all the dev listeners out there, but I'll keep it fairly high level and brief. But if you're curious on how this is possible, the first was in 2017. There was an update called the segregated witness upgrade. And this essentially enabled content to be stored in the witness data of a transaction on Bitcoin. And then we had the taproot update, which is probably the most significant, and that was in November 2021. And that uses Merkleized abstract syntax trees, which enable more flexible contracts and basically us to be able to have configure more spending paths on Bitcoin. And this essentially removed these data constraints for up to 4 MB on a Bitcoin block. And I think at the time, people were super excited thinking, wow, these updates, they're going to blow Ethereum out of the water. This is going to be huge. And in the end, there really wasn't a whole lot of noise or developments that generated or adoption after these updates happened. Certainly some interesting things occurred, but really it was just enough to push us over that hurdle and open up the doors for Casey Rodomar, who founded Ordinals, to find this loophole so that we could get this genie out of the bottle and have ordinals on Bitcoin.
Just skipping back a little bit, just testing my history here. So before Stacks, I also remember there was another like side chain to Bitcoin. I think it was called Counterparty, which allowed like swapping and allowed like trading of items. But okay, I'll have to double check that because it's testing my knowledge. This is at least 6 years ago.
I have to say, I have to say all my knowledge on the devs too. So you might be testing my knowledge as well in this one.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to check it after the show.
Yeah, I definitely recommend checking out Stacks though. It's the largest Bitcoin Web3 project out there at the moment and has continued to develop. And that's why I like to bring it up, just to let people know, hey, Bitcoin NFTs, these have actually been around for a while, secured through Stacks, but they're also leveraging Bitcoin's, all the benefits that Bitcoin has to offer and could present some interesting scalability solutions that are causing all the controversy around ordinals.
And with Stacks, is that like if you're thinking about Arbitrum, for example, is that comparable? Like it settles down to Bitcoin, or is it more like a side chain, which is kind of, I don't know, checkpointing to Bitcoin?
So the exact nomenclature around stacks is rather debatable, but I think it's fair to say it is a Bitcoin layer. Most would argue that it's a L2. The way it functions has all of these L2 qualities, and one of the reasons why it some people can write it off quick, and I think too quickly, is because there is a token involved, stacks. But essentially, this just functions like a gas token. This is what enables
Hmm.
us to have this consensus mechanism called proof of transfer, so that you're able to leverage Bitcoin's benefits.
Okay, got you. And so you mentioned the founder of Ordinals. Ordinals was based on the Taproot update from 2021. So let's go into a bit like how do Ordinals, aka like Bitcoin NFTs, how are they different than, for example, a Solana NFT or an ETH NFT? Like, what are the key differences?
Sure, I think something that's so unique to Bitcoin ordinals, Bitcoin NFTs, is that for the first time we really have something that's directly on chain. Uh, NFTs on Ethereum are actually images and data that's stored not directly on chain but on IPFS. So if somebody essentially stops paying for that service, your data, that NFT, could go away, could vanish, and that's essentially what we are seeing when we have these rug pulls. So one of the reasons why people are so excited about ordinals and why everybody's looking to Bitcoin is because we're able to leverage Bitcoin's durability and longevity. So this is offering super high value. And while we're super nascent in where we are in the timeline and developments with everything, we're already seeing in just the past 6 months some of the biggest NFT brands come to Bitcoin for ordinals. For example, Magic Eden, Yuga Labs, Beeple, DGods, all these huge brands. And then not only that, but we're starting to see some luxury adoption, like Asprey Bugatti. They're in the process of minting a collection, which is absolutely stunning. And once fully minted, it is positioned to become the first blue chip NFTs on Bitcoin. So it's a huge renaissance moment. And personally, coming from the luxury and art sector, I think this is so exciting and meaningful because I think art is just the perfect way to enact change and enact this cultural shift.
Hmm. Hmm. And you mentioned that Magic Eden is already on big, like supporting ordinals. Is there is there anything that you can do with ordinals? Because there's a big topic in Solana. You know, people want utility. They want utility from the NFTs. Like, what can I do with it? And there's usually like a roadmap. There's a game in the future. Like, it's almost a meme at this point that devs promise all these different things for the NFTs. What are you seeing on Bitcoin? Is it early in the story where it's still purely about trading, or is there also starting to be like a utility questions?
I mean, absolutely. I think that's a really interesting question because I was just on a Twitter space today talking about uh, gaming developments happening through Ordinal. So already people are starting to develop games. We're seeing music files. We're seeing, already, of course, JPEGs, both images and writing script being able to be uploaded to Bitcoin. So, people are uploading all different kinds of things already, like books, like 1984 and the Bible have been inscribed on Bitcoin forever and ever. And this is not going anywhere. It's a forever database. So I mean, already the use case is the fact that it's going to always be there, and that is one of the biggest value propositions that Bitcoin has to offer over any other blockchain in regards to security and durability. Uh, for other use
It do-
cases, I mean, it really depends on that project behind it. But the nice thing is that once you put it there, you don't necessarily have to have a project or marketing and PR team behind the project. Although we are seeing some really exciting projects come to Bitcoin, for example, Taproot Wizards, On-Chain Monkey, and I'm happy to dive into some of these communities later. But
yeah,
definitely check them
Taproot
out.
Wizards. That's I saw. I think that's Udi. Udi has that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
What's the story behind the Taproot Wizards? Can you share that?
Sure. I can get into a little bit of a TLDR, but
Yeah.
essentially, uh, and maybe I don't know exactly how I want to frame this story, so I might have to edit this part. Um, so I would say that Udi, when he heard about ordinals being inscribed on Bitcoin, I think he mentioned in a podcast once that he was so curious about it because it was, not necessarily because of the technology itself, but really because it was upsetting all of these
Mm,
fundamental maxi uh, maxi Bitcoiners who are really just, they think that putting a JPEG on Bitcoin is a profanity and must be stopped. And the fact is that Bitcoin's permissionless, so it really kind of goes against you know this open market capability and approach, and it's kind of a little bit irrational in that way. And so I think he started this Taproot Wizards because he wanted to really just stick it to the man, and so he inscribed took up an entire block with these wizards, and this was kind of a way to how do I say this
kind
nicely?
of like yeah, I get what you mean. Kind of
Kind of a
a bit of
gesture,
a yeah
just make a
proverbial
gesture to those maxis and just say, "Hey, ordinals are here to stay. There's nothing you can do about it, and Bitcoin is magical again."
yeah.
So,
Get you. Okay, got you. Yeah, I mean they look very recognizable. I can say it that way. Okay, so that's ordinals. So we can say that in the last year or so, Bitcoin, which hadn't changed or hadn't really gotten any new superpowers in quite a while, suddenly was able to support NFTs. However, I mean rudimentary, but at the same time, as you said, because Bitcoin has the most Lindy, it's the oldest chain. There's from a provenance standpoint, it's I guess the most attractive in many ways. So, and then the innovation continued. So then we moved on to Bitcoin DeFi. So can you tell us about that?
sure. So since ordinal theory came out, there's been a lot of various experimentations. I mean, ordinals itself is an experimentation, essentially. But we've seen a new derivative token that leverages JSON script. So basically, it's certain code that you can inscribe on Bitcoin, and depending on the limitations you put around that contract, there's a protocol that is able to take that inscription and index it and tell you how many tokens are allotted. So we're seeing these BRC20 tokens evolve and come out of this ordinals ecosystem, and they've really taken off. I mean, meme coins just last month reached $1 billion market cap. I read somewhere, and then we're just seeing all these new projects come out, and people are just going crazy for them, especially in Asia. So it's one of the reasons why Bitcoin has now been positioned as the highest volume the second highest volume NFT chain for NFTs. So it's been exciting to see these tokens take off. Again, they are experimental, so do your own research. But that also stemmed from another development around Bitcoin usernames, and that's what you may have also seen .sats names. And this is essentially the first on-chain name scheme on Bitcoin, using this JSON formula. Uh, Also, I heard JSON from the founder of JSON. It's pronounced JSON, but I'm saying JSON. I assume that is
I
the
think
correct.
people will know what you
I
mean,
hope
and
people know
that's how I've always heard it as well.
whether you pronounce it
Yeah,
JSON or JSON. This is what I'm JSON script. So basically, you're putting that kind of data onto a SAT, a Satoshi, and you can put your name there.
and for the BRC20s, for someone who's used to using Solana, they're used to say swapping on Jupiter, they're used to sending tokens around to different wallets. What is the user experience of a BRC20 versus a SPL token or an ERC20?
I'm less familiar with ERC20, but from my understanding, it's a pretty similar protocol. Uh, though I being more of the Bitcoin, a Bitcoiner myself, I would probably want to look more into that before, sharing any particular advice
Yeah,
or
for sure.
comparisons.
I mean more like you know, is it possible just to say have a say Xverse, which we'll get to pretty shortly? Um, do you have a collection of different BRC20s as well as the amount of Bitcoin on the wallet? I'm just curious, like from the user's perspective, how does it actually work? Operating with the BRC20s.
Sure. So we do support BRC20 tokens. You can store them safely in the wallet. You can send and receive them. You can connect to the marketplaces to mint them. So we've been supporting many different mints, which has been really an exciting thing to witness. We've had so many users come in through BRC20 tokens. I mean, we've had like over 300,000 wallet downloads, just to give you an idea. So it's
Wow.
been pretty big, big hit in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Uh, Beyond BRC20 tokens, we're also seeing another development around rare sats. So because we Satoshis are now unique, and they have you can have ordinal theory that's just ascending numbers assigned to them. What we're now seeing is people assign alphanumeric, uh, taking the alphabet and assigning numbers to that alphabet. And instead of ascending order, like, they do descending order. And that's because in the future, you will eventually be able to mint your own name. So I was able to calculate, okay, how far off Elizabeth, my name is about, in I think it's in 50 years, I'll be able to mint the Elizabeth name. And again, this is all experimental. This is all based off of, you know, an individual Casey Rodomar saying, hey, this is how Sats names work. I think anybody can determine how you want, your name to function. Also, it can look different in different languages. For example, this 26 letter English language could be different from the Arabic or Cyrillic Russian language. And so depending on how many letters are in different alphabets, it could look different in different languages for when your name becomes available. But the thought around that is that the shortest names are available most distantly into the future.
Okay. And is this the same names as you're saying is like the ordinal, was it ordinal name service or
So the
stack
dot sats, that's what's a little bit
dot
tricky. There's
sats?
there's the sats names, and those are the ones that are
Hmm.
alphanumerically uh, assigned, versus the dot sats names, and that's an inscription. And essentially,
Hmm.
it's like a protocol that's saying, hey, if you're the first person to inscribe the text Elizabeth dot sats, you are the first, and congratulations. And now you can leverage, eventually in the future, they're hoping that we can leverage these kinds of decentralized identities for many different use cases. Probably the most obvious one being able to send and receive Bitcoin instead of, using a long address, just like at any other
Hmm.
ENS, DNS, you can just use your .sats username.
Got you. Okay, makes sense. Okay, and you mentioned also that it's not just BRC20s but ORC20s. Is that relating to the rare sats or that's something different?
Yeah, so ORC20s is also a recent experimental token development, and this is just a potential solution to offer, scalability and security options for BRC20. So it's just another evolvement of these kinds of tokens. One other interesting development that I think is worth mentioning that we're seeing recently is recursive inscription. So there was definitely a lot of concerns around the congestion of the Bitcoin blockchain due to BRC20s and JPEGs, and so recursive inscriptions are really interesting because what they do is it's an inscription that references another inscription, and this provides composability of the Bitcoin blockchain. So essentially, we're able to have high resolution for a far lower file size, and it's also much more cost efficient. So we're kind of seeing like this skyscraper effect on the Bitcoin blockchain, where we're being much more efficient with what we can inscribe on blocks and build onto from there. And as a result, we're able to have these opportunities like larger larger files that are super scalable. For example, 3D opportunities, video, uh, super dynamic, high definition inscriptions. And that is something that was pioneered by the on-chain monkey community. So definitely check them out. They just had a super successful mint around that.
What is the on-chain? What is the on-chain monkey? Super monkey?
Yeah, so
What?
they're an Ethereum, originally an Ethereum project, but they recently minted their first ordinals collection, and now they've created this on-chain monkey dimension. So it's a project utilizing recursive inscriptions, and even, I don't know if we want to get into cursed inscriptions. A lot of scary words here, but
I don't know. You tell me. You're our guide. Is it worth getting into? Is there something there?
I don't know if well, why not? I'll tell you, and then you can decide if you want to cut this stuff
Yeah,
out. But
sounds good.
essentially, the when ordinals came about, there were some that there were some bugs in the protocol, and so not all of the inscriptions were successfully minted. And
Mm.
now, with recent fixing of the bugs, those inscriptions are available. However, if we were to put those inscriptions into the pool of all the inscriptions out there, one thing that people are saying makes these inscriptions so valuable is how early on they've been minted. So if you have inscription number 1,000, that could be super
Mm.
valuable to you tentatively. And so the core devs of ordinals did not want to just throw these inscriptions into the pool, and instead they have titled them cursed inscriptions. And rather than giving them ascending order positive, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 assigned numbers, they're giving them negative numbers. So we have now a -1 ordinal or -2, and so if you're a lucky person who initially had a failed inscription, now you can have a cursed inscription.
I like that. It's like a good karma for taking the plunge early on and taking the risk. It's like a nice little payback. Okay, and everything that you're telling us, I have to say, it sounds exciting. Of course, it's a completely different world than what people in Solana are used to. There's different constraints, there's different positives and negatives, but these new developments were taken in a very negative way from quite a sizable portion of the community in the Bitcoin community, as far as I was aware, and it was quite a controversial advancement. Can you tell us a bit about like why these changes were so divisive, and a bit about like how that played out in the last, I don't know, I guess a year or two?
Sure. Well, ordinals have only been around since the past 6 months, really. The first one to be inscribed was in December of last year, and they really
So
took off.
Taproot, so Taproot wasn't controversial in the beginning. It was only when that new possibility was sort of unleashed.
Totally. In fact, Taproot was really praised by these Bitcoin. Let's call it two separate camps. There's the Bitcoin
Hmm.
extreme fundamentalists, and then let's
Hmm.
say we have moderates. Uh,
Hmm.
and these fundamentalists were actually totally about, all for the Taproot upgrade. They thought, okay, this is going to flip Ethereum, and their promise was all around this stock to flow model. Fiat is going to zero, this hyper Bitcoinization. But ultimately, none of this was coming to fruition. And not only that, but these you know extremists, they really seem to be so controlling over Bitcoin. I mean, all they want it to be used for is a sound money layer. And to a certain degree, I think we can all agree on that use case as Bitcoiners. That's so vital to our mission for Bitcoin. But it comes to a point of where it stems beyond rationale when you start to push back around free markets and not accepting Bitcoin as a permissionless ecosystem. But it's interesting you said majority, because it's actually, I would argue to say that it's a minority group who believe this. It's just there's 100 million Bitcoiners in the world, and this is probably just a few people on Twitter. I mean, a few thousand people just happen to have very loud voices and are
Mm.
kind of the influencers in that space. But I have to say, on the other hand, we have these moderates, and this is the majority of people who are interested in new ideas and interested both in the dev and user side of things, how we can continue to develop Bitcoin and make it usable and bring mass adoption there. So, we want to find ways to make Bitcoin usable, and so it's not just about hoarding your coins, but we want to create a really vibrant and free market for this space. So, I think at this point, it's all about finding common ground. Uh, People, for example, we all have to agree that people were inscribing arbitrary data, non-economic data on Bitcoin for years. The first Bitcoin block, literally the first block, had arbitrary data on it. So it is a free market. It's for fair to compete for this block space, and the taproot update and ordinals are essentially this Trojan horse that's come in, and it's like this is familiar. This is within the boundaries of Bitcoin's. We're not making any changes to Bitcoin itself, but we are presenting a new way to look at Bitcoin, a new use case, which is data storage.
Because the traditional criticism from, I guess, the ETH side that I've seen is that Bitcoin became like, it was a payments blockchain, and then because the fees got expensive, it became more of like a what's the term, a store of value kind of use case that
Mm-hmm.
like the narrative kind of shifted, and then like the fees. I mean, if you look at fees on Ethereum versus Bitcoin, Ethereum was always having like a lot more fees. And these new use cases, I'm guessing, have probably supercharged fees on the Bitcoin network compared to what it was,
Yeah,
before ordinals.
I mean, that's exactly it. The fundamentalists, they really wanted Bitcoin to just be used as a store of value like gold. You sit,
Mm,
you hoard it, you look at it, you watch it. That's it. Not even payments. I mean, ideally, they're like, oh, if this could be used as a payment, that's great. But so they're okay with some kinds of protocols like Lightning, but otherwise, any other kind of use case, they were really pushing against, and that is a very valid concern, is around the congestion of the blockchain, and the fees going up. But I think that's kind of an inevitable fact. It's just an inevitable occurrence. It's going to happen if we're looking for mass adoption. We need to be able to face these issues, because we need to find scalability solutions. If we want Bitcoin to have mass adoption, this is something that is going to need to be addressed. Uh, but also, the fact is that this has been so good for the price of Bitcoin. It's been excellent for the economic security of the chain. We've seen a whole new wave uh, of VCs and artists and projects and developers come to Bitcoin for ordinals, and we kind of experienced this firsthand our own wallet when we were around that time that ordinals were coming out. We were in Paris at Paris Blockchain Week, and Xverse received first prize at the startup competition out of 700 startups. People were seeing the all the exciting developments happening on Bitcoin, and I think that's not only a win for Xverse, but for everybody that's already been building on Bitcoin.
So I will very briefly make a bit of a steelman for the I guess the counter argument towards having ordinals and having more economic DeFi, for example. And I guess it would be that the one thing that's kind of set Bitcoin apart from almost every other crypto is there has been this like really really strong resistance to most change. I mean, I remember the civil war about increasing block size way back when, and in some ways like that very like hard social layer that is like very kind of ossified and not changing, it does give you, I guess, confidence that there will be 21 million Bitcoin also in 20 years, or they're not going to like change stuff over time. So I can understand that, and I can also understand that if it's too successful, then maybe the network has trouble actually like meeting that first use case. But having said that, like I see if it's supposed to be permissionless, then I mean, you can't really gatekeep what can and can't be done on the chain, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's kind of the point. It should be available for everyone to use, however it's possible.
Right, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that is one of the most valid concerns is like are are we changing Bitcoin? Did we break Bitcoin? And
Mm,
no, not at all. We didn't make any changes to Bitcoin. Like this was there's no hard fork here. Uh, the the number of Bitcoins available isn't changing. We're simply adding a new use case for the block space, and we're making it more accessible to everyone. And already, with recursive inscriptions, we're finding new solutions to make it scalable, to make it more usable, and and we need this because without ordinals are good because they're paying the miners, right? And we need to be able to incentivize the miners to keep Bitcoin going. So this is actually quite vital for the
yeah,
chain, and has
one
already
of the
been.
best. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just about to say it's already been embraced by Bitcoin Magazine. Supported we had an ordinals alley at the Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin 2023 conference. We had a whole gallery showcasing ordinals. So Bitcoin Magazine has been very supportive. They even launched their own collection, and even Michael Saylor, who I think is kind of the a lot of fundamentalists, extremists would have seen him as like their all-time, leader, and here he is embracing ordinals as well and really seeing this as an interesting development. So I think it's good win-win for everyone all around. It's just a matter of being open-minded.
Yeah, because one of the more, I think, compelling arguments about Bitcoin long term, or compelling counter arguments against Bitcoin, is the fact that once mining rewards die out, you have to grow fees to be able to still compel miners to actually do the work. And
Mm,
so, if everyone is just sitting on their Bitcoins, like you're not going to have sufficient fees to make it worthwhile to actually mine it. And so, this is, I think, really valuable in that respect for for the longevity of Bitcoin as well.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been talking for longer than I expected. So apparently there is a lot going on in Bitcoin. But now let's briefly touch on where you're working and what you guys are doing inside this larger picture.
Sure. So I'm head of growth at Xverse, and Xverse is the leading Bitcoin wallet for Web3. We have first class support for ordinals, BRC20 tokens. And the reason why we created Xverse is because before there really wasn't a wallet out there that was, just for the everyday user. Most were optimized for devs. I think we were talking about a few wallets out there uh, before this call, and just realizing, hey, this is such a great solution. How did this not already exist? And so essentially, what we're offering is many different features, not just payments, but also you know support for NFTs and even support for connecting to decentralized applications on Bitcoin, like marketplaces, like DeFi protocols. And this is all a very seamless, intuitive experience that you might be more familiar with coming from a wallet like Phantom on Solana or MetaMask on Ethereum. So we really wanted to bring that seamless user experience to Bitcoin. And not only that, but we're looking even at Lightning scalability, L2 scalability solutions, stacks, Lightning for instant payments. So yeah, that's basically our main goal is to create something that's not only user friendly but also highly advanced. So we're first to support all these exciting features and developments on Bitcoin.
Yeah, so maybe we should have introduced Xverse first because now people should be able to see that you guys are basically at the tip of the spear in terms of the innovation on Bitcoin because you're having to evaluate it and include it into the wallet as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean it's been absolutely insane. I have to say we didn't even have, I mean, which makes sense. We didn't have ordinals on the roadmap at the beginning of this year because they did not exist. There was the very beginning of everything, and our small team has just been so fast to ship everything. We're super, we've just been super efficient. And I also should say we are open source as well, and also available on iOS and Android, as well as a Chrome browser extension. So if you're listening, you can definitely check it out on on the Apple Store or Google, and download it. Let us know what you think, because we love to hear from our users. That's also something that helps to dictate our roadmap is user feedback, and that's something that we highly value at Xverse.
And just to ask the obvious one, this is a non-custodial wallet, right?
It is non-custodial.
Yeah. Okay. And awesome that you guys are open source. I mean, Phantom isn't until this to this day, to my knowledge.
Oh,
So that's
interesting.
nice to hear that you guys have already got that. So, like, how has the adoption been so far with regard to Xverse? You said that you won an award in Paris. Have you guys managed to kind of catch the wave of the adoption of these new technologies?
Yeah, so Xverse was the first wallet to officially support ordinals, and it was it's you have to act so fast because you ship a new feature and then somebody else comes out with a new protocol in development, and you want to support that as well, but then you're reliant on a third party API, and they're not quite supporting it yet, so it's like they're like third party indexers and inscription services. So we're all working together with all of these different pieces of the ordinals infrastructure and reliant on each other to be successful. So one thing that was really exciting this past year, actually a couple months ago, is when we were all gathering in Miami for Bitcoin 2023, there was also a side event, Ordinals Conference, where we were all able to meet each other, many of us for the first time, meet all these different protocols and have some really fantastic discussions, and uh, talk with some of the VCs that are coming into the space as well. And so just the support has been absolutely fantastic. I mean, that event was sold out. There's another one coming up in Singapore as a side event for Token 2024. So if you're in Asia or planning to be out there, definitely check us out. We'll be there. And yeah, it's just been yeah, phenomenal to have this kind of support. Not only directly within Bitcoin and building new bridges within various layers of the Bitcoin ecosystem, but also beyond. Seeing people from Ethereum and Solana. I think some of the most of the ordinals adopters were first and foremost people coming from these other chains because they get it. They're familiar with NFTs. They see the value, and so it's just a matter of taking advantage of the newest support tools out there. And I would say Xverse is the place to start if you want to get started in the ordinals ecosystem. Download Xverse, and from there you can connect to all the tools you need.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. And like looking forward to the future, it does sound like there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of new development happening. How do you see the future in the next, say, year or so with Bitcoin versus existing smart contract platforms like, as we've been referring to, Solana, for example?
Sure. Well, I would say, I mean, to compare the two biggest ones, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're two very different systems, which is good. If Bitcoin fails for some reason or Ethereum fails, then the other survives, and vice versa. So if they're too similar, then we have these mutual potential vulnerabilities. So it's a good thing to have very different kinds of ecosystems that are all working on various solutions. I will say that Ethereum appears to be becoming more and more centralized, and ultimately, I think it boils down to two paths. Um, a Ethereum flips Bitcoin and has the largest market share, which is totally not the case at the moment, but it could happen. Or we're going to see a lot of demand for Bitcoin L2s and scalability solutions. And I think we're going to see kind of this homecoming moment. Obviously, I'm in camp Bitcoin. I do think is the most immutable blockchain and self sovereign money of all. And this is, uh, in my view, this is the place to be. It's the place to be building. And I think if we're able to make it scalable and accessible like Ethereum, there's really we have a key to unlocking decentralized finance, that the entire DeFi system.
So, because this is, I guess, the main thing behind my question there is, so you do see it as maybe not a winner takes all, but you do see Bitcoin actually starting to compete with traditional smart contract blockchains, whether it's
I think
through like L2s or yeah.
yeah, I think the potential is certainly there, and we're already seeing it. I think the Bitcoin market cap is more than double Ethereum, I believe. I'll need to fact check
Mm.
that. Uh, but before, we're seeing hardly any apps. All the apps took off on Ethereum until now. We're starting to see these developments with the Stacks blockchain, and now with Ordinal's infrastructure. And I think it's all the beginning. It's very nascent ecosystem, but we're seeing this demand, and a lot of it is thanks to Ordinals.
Got you. And so you're more bullish on ordinals than BRC20s?
Well, I mean, BRC20s are leveraging inscriptions, so I mean it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of one and the same. I think people are a lot more skeptical around the security and the what's the word? What's the word when you're like
Like they're more
uh,
skeptical of the use case of BRC20s versus ordinals, or
uh, I'm like my brain is getting fried at the end of the day. I might have to cut this part, but the price of ordinals, the
the floor?
no the when you're like guessing what the price is on something.
Like the price discovery or something
The
like that.
the pu- 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 the
Pri-
if like it's very skeptical. Like you don't know exactly what the price is, and you're just predicting it. And you're saying, oh, it could be this or that.
Yeah. Okay, I can't think of the word, but it's like very speculative, right? Like no one
Speculative.
really knows speculative, so no one really knows how to value it.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot more caution around BRC20 tokens because there's a lot of speculation around the pricing and the
Mm.
projects behind it, and also some security concerns. I mean, it's all experimental, but the main point here is that it's bringing a whole new wave of adoption and talent and funding to the ecosystem, and
Mm.
that has really been the catalyst for I think a lot of the Bitcoin price action, a lot of the institutional adoption we're seeing now with BlackRock and these other institutions, and I think all eyes and I would say all roads are leading to Bitcoin.
Spoken like a true Bitcoiner. And so, as a true Bitcoiner, I'm looking for for some wisdom or some guidance for the folks who are listening and they're not really in the Bitcoin world. Where can they stay up to date on what's going on with all this these new developments apart from
Oh, this
Xverse
is
Twitter?
yeah. There's so many good follows out there. I would have to say definitely check out Leonidas. He is an NFT historian. So I think his handle is Leonidas NFT. Uh,
Hmm.
and he's kind of like an Ordinals influencer out there. He is a host of the Ordinals show, which has hundreds of people tune in several times a week. It's a fabulous show if you want to keep up to date with what's happening in the Ordinals ecosystem. He's also the co-founder of Ord.io, which is an Ordinals Explorer tool out there. Uh, and then, if I may, a second good follow is Munib, who is the co-founder of the Stacks blockchain, and he's been really spearheading a lot of the L2 developments around Bitcoin, and especially like with a focus on DeFi, I would say. And he is also the CEO of Trust Machines. So Trust Machines is kind of like you know the consensus to Ethereum as Trust Machines is to Bitcoin. It's this company that's really spearheading a lot of the projects and developments happening in the space. So two good follows, a good place to start.
Perfect, perfect. I'll add them in the show notes. So my last question before we hop off is, you said that you got into Bitcoin and crypto like around a year ago, coming into the luxury channel. I'm curious to hear, like, now that you've been in for a year and with everything that's going on, um, like, what's your feeling about having entered? Do you feel like we're through the worst of it, or do you feel like there's still some more pain to come?
Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, right when I entered, it was when everything was crashing, right? So,
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
I was always thinking, well, it can only get better. And I have to say, it was, it was slow at first. I mean, I was okay with that because we were still building out our own product and company, and there was a lot to, a lot of internal building to do. But I think, we were ready right when ordinals came out. It was just the timing could not have been better. And
Mm.
when we were ready to support that, and we had the foundation was built, and we were just ready to scale from there. So and then in regards to the ecosystem itself, I would say similarly, there was a lot of people already there building, but it's also been so exciting to see all these new different communities come in and embrace Bitcoin. So there's been a lot of recent orange pilling. Luckily we had a lot of great educational material out there. So we have a blog, we have a podcast, and then we're continually supporting various meetups and conferences. So you'll see our team very active in the ecosystem. Definitely, if you see Xverse somewhere, come by, say hi to our team, and also recommend people to join our community. We're on Twitter, we're on Discord. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn, what have you. But most
You're everywhere.
importantly, yeah. But most importantly, I was going to say definitely download the wallet and check it out. That's a good place to start. There's a fiat on ramp, so you can easily purchase Bitcoin and just get started. Start connecting to various applications and inscribe your first Bitcoin NFT.
Alrighty, then you heard. I was going to say you heard it first, but I'm sure you didn't. But I can say that it sounds like Bitcoin is exciting again, which is, I think, exciting. Bitcoin is where it all started, and it's really cool to hear that there's some cool stuff happening, and there's some smart people really looking to push it in new directions and see what they can do with it. So yeah, I'll be definitely keeping an eye on it, and go check out Xverse for the phantom-like experience on the new BTC opportunities. Thanks so much for coming on, Elizabeth, and taking us on this whirlwind tour. It was a real pleasure to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me, Louis. Appreciate it.
All right.